You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
All right, hello everybody. It's Monday night, and you know what that means. That means we're probably reviewing the Star Wars show. Tonight happens to be the Book of Boba Fett. And which episode are we? As you can see above, 4. Chapter 4. So Chapter 4, I think, is really when... I don't know. To me, I think that this is when it's finally made its connection. It's sort of achieved a balance now between some of the flashback stuff, which, by the way, I think we're done with now because he's obviously healed from the Bacta tank. But I mean, you know, you have that, you have some action, you have some of this other stuff. So I think we're finally at a point now where, you know, you're getting a little bit more of a balance of what really makes this show. Well, I should just say what makes the show. I was going to say what makes it good, but not everybody has been liking what's been shown so far. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, overall, you know, before we really get into it, I actually think that this is the episode where we really see what this show is going to be about. And I think it's finally hit its stride, and I think it's finally giving us a good balance of different things. What were your thoughts?
You're
probably like, I hated it, actually. Oh wait, I gotta remember, this isn't Visions.
This particular episode was cool. I like the fact that, you know, we kind of got away from the whole Tusken Raider thing, and we at least got some see some stuff with Fennec Shand.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is really the origin of Fennec Shand, actually. Like,
yeah,
one of the things that was cool was you actually got to see how they, how they met, and it was funny when I was looking at the synopsis. And this is before I actually saw the episode, but I was, you know, getting some of the stuff ready for our show today. It just said, you know, Boba Fett meets Fennec Shand. I was like, kind of weird. I mean, what are you talking about? Like, I actually thought that they were just cheesing out on the description of the show or something, but it turns out that's exactly what it was about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think that it was really interesting to see how. I mean, I'm not really completely sold on the whole mechanical thing with her yet. You know, it's
I
don't know, but
I know. I have a lot. I actually have a lot to say about. Well, really, all the main scene. I mean, it's not so much like a going through it, you know, scene by scene, and I mean, I don't really want to be the video version of, you know, the synopsis of the show or something. But I mean, at each point during each act of the show, there were things that I loved probably more than anything else in this episode, or I mean, in the series. Then there are other things, once again, I'm like...
Not so much.
You know, you guys, and they're so close. They're so close. Yeah. By the way, Ronaldo and Joanne join us tonight.
Hey.
Ronaldo, to give his overall, says, hey guys, this episode had some flaws, but enjoyable. That's a very measured...
Yeah, and then I actually had to really, I really had to side with Ronaldo on that one. Like, that's exactly kind of how I felt about this.
Well, I think what it's doing too is it's setting up what's to come. I definitely, you know, and I've said this since the show has started. I've said, look, this is the type of show that I think, honestly, you have to watch as like a binge watch. You know, this isn't one of those episode by episode shows. You could do that with The Mandalorian because it's a different kind of show. And I think that that's what's kind of tripping people up. I think that a lot of people are disappointed because they expected something different and they're not really tuned into what this show really is and what they're actually getting from it. So,
yeah, I mean, I think this is cool. I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I really liked a lot of different things that they did with it. But like Ronaldo said, there were definitely some flaws to it. But you know, it was overall like a really good episode to me.
Yeah, so I mean, let's get into this thing. I mean, when we first start out, and what's funny about this too is that there's like a bunch of stuff, and forgive us guys, a couple things that we should point out in the beginning. One, this is not going to be some linear blow by blow, play by play thing of the episode, right? So I mean, we're going to go probably roughly in order because it just makes sense to talk about it that way, but we're probably going to be jumping around, to be honest. And then also in that, this is going to be a pretty heavy spoiler review. So, I know a lot of times, nobody's actually criticized this yet, but a lot of times, you just see like a review, and I should probably start putting it either in the description or maybe the title or something, that these are definitely spoiler-heavy reviews. So, you've been warned. But here's something in the early thing, right? Because there's a bunch of stuff that I really liked about how a lot of it started out, but one of the things, and this is so stupid, and I'm admitting this, there's a scene where he's scoping out Jabba's palace by himself, and he's kind of seeing the guards, and he's like, oh, there's too many of them, let's just go get something to eat or something. But the effect that they use for the scope is one of the most realistic scope effects. And I mean, it's dumb, but I appreciated that attention to detail. That, he would move it around and you'd have like a little bit of that distortion. It looked like you were looking through an actual scope. It wasn't, a camera shot with a circular cutout or something. I mean, it really looked like you were looking through a scope. And that's like a good nitpick, but it's a nitpick. But that's the kind of thing I really appreciated.
That's the production value in you, It's...
Yeah, maybe. By the way, Dwight joins us. So hi, Dwight.
Hey, Dwight.
I'm trying to think of, because there's like a lot of stuff that along the way for this episode that I really actually liked, and I think that you and I are probably now. There may be different things, but I think that one of the things, just by our beginning comments, that I think that we're probably going to agree on all the way through this, is that almost every scene had good and bad.
Yeah.
Or maybe not bad, but
Not
maybe flawed.
Scene, but yeah, I mean, and like I said, even taking, the fact that, okay, he goes to, Jabba's palace. He's on the mission, he's on the mission he wants to get his ship back. And of course because he definitely wants to find his armor so he can kind of, be the Boba Fett that everyone knows. And he goes and sees like, okay, there's way too many guards, so and just the like the unbelievable part, of course, it's like, okay, he's eating whatever he probably caught out there in the wild, and he's barbecuing it or whatnot. But then, like, the banta is like hungry. And he's like, okay, he tossed him like this huge banta.
I know.
This thing
the
is
banta.
like,
the banta will never. I thought it's so funny, dude. I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, really? That's what you're gonna give this like little morsel? That'd be like giving us like a little chocolate chip or something. It's
like a Hershey Kiss and saying like, I mean, here's your dinner.
Right? You'd be better off just not giving him anything. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, on one hand, because there's a couple of things in this that I noticed where they were it's almost like they're trying to purposely show you through this whole series that he's really kind to animals or something. And
yeah,
it would not support.
I mean, it's just like,
Yeah, now, I mean, look, in the age of the whole social justice warrior thing, it could actually be, well, we need some, RG50 joined us. Yeah, no, I'm gonna put this comment up. But the thing is, we're gonna save the discussion because what he's talking about here says fire in the hole, seismic charge. I'm putting that up now, but I will say this, that was probably one of my favorite scenes of this whole episode. But anyway, yeah, I think that they're trying to actually show you that, hey, look, he's like, because that's part of the thing that I thought was kind of weird, right? Is that he's kind of, I don't know. It's sort of like they're trying to show that he's got like this really kind streak and this really sort of cruel streak too. You know, that he can mercilessly wipe out an enemy, but that he loves animals. I mean, I don't really understand that part of it, but
He probably has like a sticker on Slave One that says, my kids have paws or something like that.
yes, but remember, even though it will
It's
always
Slave
be
One,
Slave One to
whatever.
us, it's the fire spray now. Hey, while we have you guys all here, because this actually worked really well for us last time, y'all need to hit that like button, like right now. Each one of you that's on here that's chatting needs to just stop what you're, well, don't actually like close this thing out, but hit that like button right now. Because every time it's true, man. I mean, how many shows have we had where we'd have, now sometimes, yeah, we've had shows where people have been watching, but maybe only Ronaldo chats or something. But the last few shows, we've actually had a lot of people chatting. We'd have like one like or something. It's like, come on. Hit that like button, because it really does. Anybody that's watching this, maybe watching the rebroadcast, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so you can come in and chat with us. I promise, it'll be fun. But yeah, I know. I was kind of disappointed that they changed the name of the ship too.
Yeah.
And apparently what it is that the fire spray is the type of ship that it is. And then Slave One was its name, but it looks like they're just going to call it the fire spray from now on. Because he refers to it, although I think he did say it's my fire spray ship or something like that.
Possibly. Well, I even get to that later, but
well, while you're thinking about it, let me get to something Ronaldo said in here real quick. He says, "Thing I like, the whole mission was cool, good action. Really enjoyed how they showed Boba's and Fennec's relationship." And yeah, I mean, I think that might not be a bad place to start this whole thing. Some of my favorite moments in this were those times, like, by the campfire when Fennec and Boba are just sort of talking, or, in the ship and stuff like that. I really like what they did with their relationship and kind of showed you the dynamics of it right in the beginning, which actually I think was necessary. Because in The Mandalorian, we just see them, they're just together.
Yeah, well, I think what really, transpired there was just that because they come from the same world, they can relate to each other. And and Boba kind of, it's funny because Boba Fett kind of had this whole entrepreneurial type of relationship, almost kind of like the same way that you and I kind of had when we went to start our own company, right? He was just kind of like, look, I'm tired of working for everybody else and people putting me in situations that's stupid, and we know that's stupid, but you can't do anything about it because it's your job, right? And I really I love to see that approach to it. And Fennec was like, well, people like us, it's kind of what we do. But the fact that he's like, I can offer you something that no other client could ever offer you, and that's loyalty. And I really, and that kind of, you can kind of see that, like, okay, well, yeah, like no one's really cared enough about, and I think that's one of those things, is that they feel like they're so disposable that it's like, okay, well, now that someone actually is caring for me and actually wants to see me succeed, and actually, it's like, okay, you kind of want to stick around for that. So I really like that aspect. And he proved that by getting her, fixed. He didn't have to.
Yep.
He could have just left her for dead, but he actually, took the time to pick her up and take her clear across the sand to the mod squad, basically, and so they could modify her.
Yeah, and again, I mean, see, this is the kind of stuff that takes me out of it a little bit. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily the concept of the whole mod parlor. It's just the way that it's portrayed and stuff like that. It just doesn't, that kind of feels more Fifth Element to me than Star Wars.
It did. It definitely gave me like Fifth Element, Total Recall, like weird.
Right. Like some other sci-fi kind of thing. I mean, it just doesn't, I mean, fortunately they're doing that a little bit less and less. It's kind of like the little Power Ranger biker gang guys that he has. Again, it's not so much the characters or the actors or anything like that at all. It's the Back to the Future bikes and the, it's just kind of that whole like Fifth Element vibe that you get, with the costuming and all that stuff. It just doesn't, especially Tatooine. Like we talked about it in the last one.
Exactly. And my whole thing, with that was just like, okay, like you got these. I mean, once again, I hate to be like, once again, too literal here, but nothing looks sterile. Nothing like, I mean, like you got this woman all open. You get putting in metal part, and you're not checking. Like there's nothing checking her blood pressure. Like you're just doing stuff.
Nope, they just ran some windshield washer fluid and whatever else it was through her. Like, all right, you're good. Don't cover it up.
He's got the T1000 hand as he keeps switching and modifying crap. I mean, it's just like,
and that's it.
And that's what it felt like. It felt like Terminator or something like that. Like it was weird.
Absolutely. And the thing that, my whole thing was like, look, I would have been happier if it had been more of a backwoods type medical facility, kind of like the doctor in the original, like the 1989 Batman that fixed up the Joker, kind of like this back alley doctor kind of guy. Mm-hmm. That would have made a little bit more sense to me. And yeah, it's kind of like, well, this is the best I could do. I'm sitting there thinking like, you know what? You just basically ripped out all of her insides and put in all these metal parts with no sterilization. I mean, yeah, I was fortunately the scene actually lasted longer than I would have liked. I think they could have gone through that a little bit faster. They spent a lot of time on that scene, and I guess it's because they wanted to show a bunch of stuff off. But yeah, man, that was kind of...
The cool thing was they actually showed, Thundercat was the main guy who was actually, doing the modification. So I thought that was cool.
That was cool. That was cool. Like, hey,
it's Thundercat.
I know. That was, and again, they're basically, they're basically giving us a bunch of surprises in a lot of these things. I mean, Thundercat being in this, Black Chrysanthemum as a character being brought in. There's actually been speculation that in the final episode of the season, they're going to have a live-action Omega. That's the latest talk I've heard.
Wow. I haven't heard that one.
That would be interesting.
Very.
But let's get to some of these chats. Ronaldo says, the Sarlacc pit looked terrifying, and I loved it when Boba threw the bomb. Although Fennec actually threw the bomb. That was cool. Yeah, that was actually one of my favorite scenes because, and it was funny because one of my friends, Doug, he was kind of going, hey, I mean, why does he think that the armor's still in there? Doesn't he remember that he used the armor to basically bust out of there? And I was like, well, he was kind of delirious. I mean, I don't think that he remembers that a bunch of Jawa basically stripped him to his, tidy whities. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he remembers that, but at the same time, that was a thing. And of course, amidst all these other chats, that's what Ronaldo says. And Boba didn't know his armor wasn't in the pit. You have to go back and kind of watch. I mean, on one hand, it's like I can understand that argument because he used it to get out of there. He busted up through the sand. He's kind of like crawling on it. But he probably wasn't in his right mind. He probably wasn't very lucid.
Or he probably just figured like the Sarlacc this because he ended up out of it. He probably because that was the last place he had it. The Sarlacc man just ate it again.
Yeah, that could have been. But I mean, that whole scene, man. I mean, I thought that was just really cool. The whole scene where Slave One's like riding right up on it, and then of course when it kind of like, you see that shot from inside and it covers it, kind of like a little Slave One / fire spray eclipse. Yeah, man, that was just beautiful.
Prior to that, though, I really enjoyed the fact that he kind of like was taking revenge, kind of like on some stuff.
Yeah,
like he was getting some payback. So he's like those biker guys.
The biker guys, dude.
Yeah,
that
he
was so good.
I mean, watching that like Slave One just kind of come out of the sky,
Mm-hmm.
and they had no idea that was even behind
No,
them.
and
He
you know
just
what
started
was funny
unleashing
about
on them.
that? What was funny about that was that started to make me think about stuff. Like, don't you have some guy kind of looking around, because if you're just some gang, what's to stop any ship from just coming up on you and just obliterating you? You
Well,
know?
nothing, but I think they probably didn't think, like no one really, and they're probably in the middle of nowhere. Like I said, once
Well,
again,
yeah.
they're
The whole
they're on
planet's
the
in the middle of nowhere.
outskirts with that too. So, it's kind of like you really don't expect, anybody out there to do anything like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. The fact that he kind of has, he told Fennec after they got the ship, he was like, "All right, I got I got some scores to settle." And of course, that first one, he got revenge for the Tusken Raiders on that one. And then he goes to the Sarlacc pit, into what you're talking about, where he's hovering over the thing. Now, I have the 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 thing I loved about it, I did love the whole seismic charge thing, blowing up the Sarlacc. I thought that was cool.
And what was cool about it, I mean, this is kind of a out of universe like fanboy sort of thing, but the seismic charges were the coolest things. Say in Attack of the Clones or whatever. So you're kind of marrying that with the Sarlacc pit from the original trilogy, which is cool, and it's a very interesting creative use. And the way that they basically showed it deployed, and you just know that, well, that was it for the Sarlacc.
Oh yeah, that thing is good and gone.
Because what I thought was actually really cool, and I don't know, he might want to really think about these things in the future, although I guess if you're in space, it doesn't really matter much. Because it's too bad he didn't have a center gun. Because one of the problems was, I mean, the way that thing shoots, it would just blow anything up. But the problem is it was shooting into the side. It was shooting into the sand in the side. It wasn't getting to the Sarlacc.
Right. But here's my problem. How did Fennec know that was there?
Well,
that was a whole issue for me.
I can answer that. I can actually answer that, and it's not an apologetic type thing. It's it's not the Star Wars apologist thing. This is a real thing. That the see, the problem is that when we were growing up, and it's Slave One, and we just know it as Slave One, it's obviously a type of, like, for instance, the Millennium Falcon is actually a YT 1800 or something. Yeah, it's a freighter, but I mean, that's the model. The YT, and I think it's like 1800, something like that. Okay, so if you're familiar with that model ship, you go onto the Millennium Falcon, you can kind of go, okay, I get it. It'd be like if you jumped into, if you had an Escalade, but you jumped into somebody else's Escalade, maybe it was newer, maybe it was whatever, they might have moved a few things around, but you generally know how to work the thing. And that's kind of how it is, being that this ship is a fire spray. Like, that's the type or model that it is. So if anybody's familiar with it, then, especially her being a bounty hunter.
Well, I could agree to that, but we all know bounty hunters, modify everything, and it's like she knew, and that's, it still just kind of seems like, okay, like if Boba would have done it, and that's another thing. It just almost seemed like Boba didn't even know his own ship. Like, dude, like, this is your ship. You should have thought of that.
You know why?
I mean,
I think the reason why he didn't think about, because I was thinking about that too. I mean, there's a lot of things where I was like, okay, there's probably a reason. Because the other thing that kind of struck me as odd about that whole scene was when, thing falls, does its little seismic thing, and then they, kind of fly up, and he's like, don't touch my buttons. And I'm thinking, well, if she didn't, you'd be dead.
Exactly. Yeah, true.
You weren't doing it. Where were you? It's not like you don't know the buttons there. But the reason why I think that happened is because if you look at the way that it basically, those things are meant to just be kind of like jettisoned. They don't have any kind of thrust or anything like that to it. And so, I mean, it was just by chance that thing even fell in there. That thing really should have just fallen into the sand. And I think that's what Boba was thinking, was like, well, that'd be great, but the way that this ship is, that seismic charge thing isn't going to do any good. Well, she's just like, look, we're probably going to die anyway. Might as well I mean, at least say you tried everything, you know?
Right. But yeah, I think that whole scene, I mean, like I said, it was cool, but like I said, those two things kind of really took me out. And the fact that, like, okay, you're hovering over this Sarlacc and trying to look down his throat to see if you can see your armor. Like, come on, dude. Like,
Yeah, I
that
know,
was
man.
kind of
I thought
stupid.
that was kind of, I will admit, that was a little.
Yeah, it's like,
I
oh,
know.
there it is. And then what? Like, okay, if you, let's say you did find it.
Well, I
Now
mean,
what?
once they destroyed well, that's true, because before, the Sarlacc was still there, right? I
Yeah, it
mean,
was still alive.
right, before the seismic charge thing. Because it was kind of wild, that after the seismic thing, it just essentially eradicated this thing that, he climbed down in there. And I like that. I did, again, it is kind of weird because they'll do these really attention to detail type things. And then, they'll do something really stupid like that, right? What I really liked was the fact that when he came out, she's like, hey, man, you're burning. And she's pouring water on him because of the acid. I thought that was a nice touch. And of course, it probably added to the whole, hey, you need a Bacta tank thing. It's, I mean, that whole scene was just kind of odd to me, but overall, I really liked the fact that he revisited the Sarlacc and then was just like, okay, I'm going to wipe out the biker gang. I'm going to wipe out the Sarlacc.
Right.
And again, this is more the Boba Fett I think that we want to see.
Right.
This makes sense. I mean, I like the honorable, noble part of his character. I think that part's kind of cool, too, because they explain that a little bit, which is another thing I like about this episode, is you're getting a little bit more explanation to the motivations that he has that doesn't seem to make sense from what we've seen so far of the character. Right? You alluded to it, basically, when it was kind of like, yeah, he's tired of just taking jobs and, doing the hunting thing, when it's like, how many times could we have made even more money if people just put a little bit of thought into this? And so that kind of makes sense, being part of the tribe and all that stuff. And I like the fact that, Fennec was like, well, meeting with the Tuskens has made you soft. And he's like, no, it's made me strong. So you can see a little bit of that. This is why there's that back and forth between them. Because she's still trying to do things the bounty hunter way. And to a degree, also trying to teach him, okay, if you want to do this crime boss thing, you got to go. Yeah, you got to be a little bit more like this. And what he's trying to do is take the totality of his life experiences and, just combine them.
And that's the thing. He's trying to be a king instead of a crime boss.
Yeah.
That's the problem. He's trying to, like, look out for the people, be it for the people, he's, and it's okay, but then you're trying to do it with a bunch of unlawful people. And it's just like, those two, that's oil and water. They don't mix.
Well, another thing, and then I want to get back to the chats because we got a lot of them. One of the other things that I liked that actually happened a little bit earlier before he found Fennec was you saw the Razor Crest take off, and you heard a little bit of the Mando theme, because they were trying to show you the other side. And of course, there's been a lot of people that have been picking on that scene too, because when he found her in the Mandalorian, he had his spurs, he had, some of the different stuff. Whereas in this flip side POV version of it, he was, it was like a little bit different. So I think that, I don't know if that was just a continuity thing that people missed or what, but let's get to some of these chats here. So we'll just kind of go through and discuss them. Ronaldo says, at this point, Fennec is my favorite character. And I can certainly see why. Because she's kind of that, it's going to sound terrible, but the yang to his yin. Yeah. She represents that other side. She represents the balance. But that's where I think it's going to get really interesting, because you're seeing two, like, they have the same goals and they have roughly kind of like the same path, but they still have slightly different ways of going about it. And it's them almost teaching each other what's missing in each other's thought process or even lives. So I think that they make a really good couple. I mean, not romantic,
Yeah,
but
romantically. Well, it's kind of, and I hate to keep throwing this up, because we kind of bring it almost like every week, but it totally reminds me of Cobra Kai once again.
yeah.
Because you got Johnny and Kreese where they're trying to they have the same goal, but they have slightly different ways of achieving it, or and I think that's just the same kind of concept between these two, where they both are kind of like, look, I respect you, you respect me. Yeah, I get it. But if you want to do it this way, here's the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is like, well, that's okay. I'm prepared for that. It's it's really interesting to see kind of how they're going to eventually become one cohesive unit if that's what happens.
Well, and one of the things that I thought was really strange that kind of speaks to that happened really in the last scene, or at least pretty much the last scene, is when they're on that balcony and, she says, well, how much do we have in the treasury? And he says, oh, I have a lot of credits. I just need the muscle. It's kind of like she's saying we, he's saying I. And I wonder if there's any significance to that that's going to come in later on. In other words, I wonder how accidental or how purposeful that piece of dialogue was.
Well, I can understand that because it's kind of like, in a way, it's his organization.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I get it. Like I said, I'm not.
Say
but it just
I
makes
know.
me wonder. It just makes me wonder if that's planting a seed. That's all. I mean, because if you take it at face value, it's his organization. He's the one that's building it up. But he also was basically like, look, I'm on the throne, but, I'm sharing everything with everybody. And, he's telling her, look, I'm going to cut you in. Now, he didn't necessarily say I'm going to cut you in equally. He just said I'm going to cut you in. So,
of course not.
There is that. Okay, so Ronaldo goes on to say, also, Black Chrysanthemum was freaking cool. Loved how he crushed those lizards. Trandoshans, that's all right. And then Dwight chimes in on there. He says, yeah, he said, save the discount. I'm killing this one. I did think that was kind of cool that, she's all trying to talk him down and everything else. And he thinks about it. And then, of course, she's all like, well, I'll let all your debts go or whatever if you just don't kill him. He's like, no, I'm going to kill him. Here, I'll give you the money. It was very much a Han Solo kind of move when he shot Greedo and then, tossed the coin.
Sorry for the mess.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, he didn't kill him. He just ripped his arm off.
That's true. That is true.
He only ripped one, and he only took one arm.
And he only took one arm. And I was wondering about that, too. I was wondering, is the one arm kind of the compromise that he's making?
Exactly. That's what it was. That's what made it so funny, because originally he had him by both.
Yep.
And he was about to just rip them both off. And then, that's when she started talking to him, and he was just like, all right, well, here's a compromise. I'll just take one arm then. And
I'll tell you what,
still
though,
left
man.
the cash for his debt.
I really wish, especially given this heavy Trandoshan presence, that they would bring Bosk back in. Because I'd love to see.
Coming.
And he might be. I mean, when he said, okay, well, we're going to have to get more muscle, one of the things that I noticed was they started playing the Mandalorian theme again. I don't know how many people caught that. So yeah. Din could very well be somebody he calls on. And that would make sense because they've already had interaction. So I fully expect to see Din in there. Of course, Chrysanthemum's in there. Boss could end up showing up. They haven't really foreshadowed it much, but he knows Boss quite well. Let's see what we got. Let's see. Ronaldo says, I'm sorry, that was sometimes the button doesn't hit. Okay, Ronaldo says, things I didn't like. Boba chasing that droid was really bad, especially when he said, I'm Boba Fett. Yes, that was. My God. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things that really just irritated me and took me completely out. All the way out. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, really, dude?
Who are you, Batman now? Like, shut up.
And not only that, but it's like, really? You're telling that to this little droid?
Yeah, the fact that he's chasing him around like some little... it's like, I was about to say like some Disney movie, but I thought about it. They're on Disney Plus, but but it totally reminds me of something like from like Little Mermaid or something like
Oh,
that.
I know,
Like
man.
chasing the
It
little
was
crab
it was
around.
well, kitchen. I was thinking Ratatouille.
That too. You know,
Goodness,
it's
even they
like,
had the rat catcher, which is literally
I
a
know,
rat
and
catcher. Which that part I thought was kind of cool. The little Grievous looking cook I thought was okay.
yeah, those cooks and that whole thing, just it didn't work for me at all.
Well, I liked it once they got into the hangar and they were fighting the actual Gamorrean guards and all that stuff.
Yeah, that part was cool, but I'm talking about
And
the
when they
actual
were
kitchen
initially
scene.
breaking, yeah, the kitchen scene. I get it. It was a comic relief kind of thing. But yeah, man. I mean, as soon as he had the thing up, and it's true that was kind of a Batman move.
Yeah,
He's
I'm
like, "Do you
Boba
know
Fett.
who I am? I'm Boba Fett." I'm like,
I'm like,
"What?
God.
Why?" I mean, that
Yeah.
was just this. That was just like that was the dumbest. Sometimes it's hard to believe that Favreau actually wrote this thing.
Oh, yeah, or allowed that to be shot.
And then, of course, going back a little bit, Ronaldo says, and oh my goodness, that cyborg shop was awful. Yeah, that definitely, as both of us said before, anytime they start to put anything that's a little bit more like modern sci-fi or just a modern, even the Mayor Domo. Apologies, and it just, I mean, especially that one guy, the one that was, kind of like checking people in.
Oh,
Like, oh, you
didn't
don't have an appointment. That totally reminded me of the Wizard of Oz door guy. I mean, it was just like the dialogue and everything just took me out. And it was the same thing with that mod parlor. Even though, again, conceptually, it might not be that bad if they actually handled it different, executed it a little bit differently, made it look different, looked more Tatooine-esque, perhaps. Sometimes I think they just try to go too far into expanding everything. See, this is what made George Lucas such an amazing storyteller. He only gave you the information you needed to know. This is an interesting comment from Ronaldo. He says, Boba's revenge was a bit underwhelming to me. And I can maybe understand that, but I don't know. I found it to be pretty cold and calculated. He was out hunting. And if you really look at the way Boba, the way that he was for the brief time we saw him in the films, but then also if you look at anything that's been written about him, either in the new canon, for instance, the comic books, or even in the old legends, he wasn't like some really ruthless killer. A lot of people try to make him into Cad Bane or something, and he wasn't. He was even more so, more emotionless. He did exactly what he needed to do to get the job done, nothing more, nothing less. No emotion behind it. He's doing the job. And in this case, I think a lot of people would have, I guess, maybe wanted a confrontation, like, oh, you killed my tribe and now I'm going to get you. It's not Boba Fett's style. Boba Fett's style is exactly what he did. Flies up behind them, eliminates the problem. Okay, they're gone. End of story.
Right.
And I think that part of the reason why he waited till he had the ship was a couple of reasons. Because the only thing in the whole galaxy that's more recognizable than his armor is basically his ship. Okay, so apparently we've lost Daryl for some reason. So I'm actually going to keep him because I'm sure he's going to... There he is. Okay.
Hey,
so
I got to step away for a second, so I'll be right back.
All right. Not a problem.
Right. Keep the party going.
Yep. All right. So Ronaldo basically says, I want to ask your opinion on this. I've seen some reviews of casual Star Wars fans saying that Chrysanthemum's fight was cool. They all ask, why did he do that? Oh, that's actually a very, very good question. Why he did that, I'm not entirely sure why he did that, actually, because on one hand, there was something between, in the comic books I'm talking about, there was something between him and some Trandoshan, but unfortunately, I didn't read that one. So I actually don't know, because it's true. It did seem like there was definitely something behind that whole thing. That wasn't just some accidental, he's just looking at these guys. The other theory behind it is that maybe when he was watching this and he's watching how rich they are and everything, and he was kind of down and out, because don't forget, afterwards, when Boba approaches him, he's like, hey man, it looks like you need a job. And I think what we were seeing during that scene was the fact that Chrysanthemum was once this gladiator, right? He was fighting, he would fight for money, he would fight for glory, he was in the arena, he was doing all this stuff. And then what ended up happening was, once all that was behind, and kind of like, they were saying in that one scene, hey, listen, what was once considered great and cool is now horrific to people. So I think what ended up happening was people just, looked at him a little bit differently, and it just had an effect on his psyche. And now he's looking over at this table and he's seeing just these guys, these weak little Trandoshans just living it up with all this money that he should have. And maybe he just snapped. So those are really the two schools of thoughts on it, right? It's kind of like, one was, there was something about those guys. He knew them and he was getting some revenge. The other one was, he was getting to be down and out, and he just snapped. All right, so I apologize for the lack of Daryl on the other side of me over here, but hopefully he jumps back. But I don't have it set up to where I can just put the comments up under that other scene, so I have to keep going back to this shot. Ronaldo says the scene was cool, but if you don't know the lore, it can be confusing. You think the scene needed something else to make it more understandable? Not unless they planned on elaborating on it. So I could actually see a case where maybe a couple episodes later, because remember, this is episode 4. We still have 3 episodes left. Now, granted, they got to do a lot in 3 episodes. All right, so Daryl's back. Cool. So he was asking, I explained kind of the whole Chrysanthemum, why he was going after the Trandoshans.
Mm-hmm.
But then he was kind of asking, the scene was cool, but if you don't know the lore, it could be confusing. Do we think that it needed something else? I don't necessarily think it needed anything else. And I'm also reminding everybody that, this could be explained in the next episode or episode after. Who knows?
Well, the impression they gave was he was drunk.
Well, what I was saying was it was one of two things. Because there could have been, I've been hearing a couple of different things, and unfortunately, I've read some comics, of course, that had him in there, because obviously he was one of my top 5, 10, whatever it was, favorites. But there was a storyline that somebody had told me about where some Trandoshan clan or something did him wrong, and he was getting revenge. What I think it was, it kind of goes along with what you're saying, is that he's down and out because, the whole champion gladiator thing is over. And now he's seeing these rich, weak Trandoshans with all this money, and, he was intoxicated, and he's just mad. It's kind of like starting a barroom brawl.
Yeah, he was depressed. You could tell by his body language, like he was depressed. And then especially the way the madam, I guess, of the place was kind of talking to him. She was kind of explaining to him, like, look, I know, look, you were once this person, you were not that anymore. That life is over with. You have to pick up the pieces and kind of start your own thing again. And but him wallowing in his sorrow and despair, consuming alcohol of some sort, he just, and then, like you said, he's seeing all these Trandoshans, just acting like they're the baddest in the land, and they're spending all this money, being flashy, and it's just like, look, I kick the crap out of you and take your money. You know what I mean? And that's just
Yep. Which is why I think that really that scene had all all the background that was necessary. Ronaldo, of course, says, yeah, Boba inside the Sarlacc was weird. It was kind of weird because, it just, especially if you know it's acidic down there, you're just going down there in your little robes and,
yeah, man.
I mean, it's just, but hey, man.
I love some armor.
Well, that's it, though. And that armor was acquired. I don't know if his dad gave it to him. Probably not, but he acquired it somehow. I don't remember. Because they had the Legends version of how he got it, but I don't know what they're doing in new canon about it. But it was definitely a special thing, and it's his trademark armor. I mean, if you think about it, if he had gotten armor that looked like any of the other Mandalorians, nobody would know he was Boba Fett.
Yeah. And the thing I love about it, they brought back, Beskar. Like, he's like, nope, it's not, when we get destroyed, it's Beskar. Pure Beskar. So I'm good.
Yeah, well, I beg to differ because that outfit that he had was mostly like canvas
Cloth.
or something. Yeah, or cloth.
Right.
It's like the only thing that was Beskar was maybe the chest plate and possibly the rocket launcher and maybe like some of the glove. But I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of Beskar on that. That is a total revisionist. It's like, yeah, I don't think so, dude. I think most of that's gone. Dwight says that was so Disney when he was chasing the little droid.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And then, of course, when you left, he says that you went to the dark side for a little bit.
That's where I live, man. That's where I live.
That's where you can't blame a guy for. That's why you can't wait for the Acolyte.
I can't.
So then Ronaldo goes on to say, I understood it was because Trandoshans hunt Wookiees, but not everyone knows that. Yeah, and then Dwight goes on to say that Wookiees and Trandoshans are enemies. Well, Dwight knows it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, Joanne comes in. Question, why did they call it the Book of Boba Fett? Which is, we actually, I think, answered this 2 shows ago.
Touched on it.
Or maybe last show.
Last episode.
Did I?
Last show, yeah, you kind of touched on it, yeah. Because it's like, it's kind of like one, they kind of following the whole chapter thing like they did the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of like following his story, like what's going on with him, like who is Boba Fett.
Right, it's basically who is it. It's basically his life story. That's why in the show you get a lot of flashbacks and stuff like that, because it's really fleshing out this character and showing who he is, why he is the way he is. Because they don't have to go back too far, because up through Return of the Jedi, we kind of get it. I mean, he was sort of mysterious, but once the prequels came out, and then, of course, the Clone Wars, I keep wanting to say cartoon, but I know everybody hates it when I say that. The Clone Wars animated series. Did he pop up in Rebels at all?
No.
Okay. Well, even with the Clone Wars thing, he was pretty much fleshed out up until that point. And then you know what you need to know. The question is, you have him at the end of Return of the Jedi, or well, I shouldn't say the end, but kind of the end of that scene where he gets into the Sarlacc pit. And then all of a sudden he pops up in the Mandalorian Season 2. And of course, every fan question was like, well, okay, what happened? And so what they decided to do was do this little mini-series, which was only going to be 1 season. And it was just to show you, here's what happened between when we last saw him in Return of the Jedi falling into the Sarlacc pit, and then when we see him again in The Mandalorian. And it's basically almost like in book form, right? You're seeing a little bit of flashback and then the current time. So hopefully that answers that one. Dwight says the armor was his father's, according to Mando's Season 2. Yeah, I do seem to remember something like that. But it kind of makes me wonder. I'm really wondering if they're going to go into that at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you could say that he took the armor off his father.
but it didn't look like Django's armor.
I mean, it's a paint job,
Not really, because if you actually look at Django's armor, it actually looked more like Mandalorian's armor. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was all metal. It was all,
Plus, Boba's has this little. It looks like some little reader or something that's on his chest plate. It's like this little red little thing, and it's kind of. And then I also noticed that on the opposite side, he has the. You know how Mando has his family, I guess his crest or his clan on his shoulder.
Yeah,
I think Boba's is on
the other side. Yeah, and it's kind of like on the chest plate off in the corner. Yeah. Ronaldo seems to be under the opinion, I think we'll see the Mandalorian, meaning Din.
Yep.
I think we will too. I mean, first of all, the fact that when he's talking about, I need some muscle, and it's kind of like, they're wrapping it up, and you actually hear a little bit of the Mandalorian theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're going to see it. And then he goes on to say, and I didn't catch this. He said we heard his voice in the trailer. I never caught that. So that...
Do you think we have a possibility of seeing Bo-Katan and the rest of them?
I was wondering about that too. Because it would almost seem... I mean, on one hand, I don't know... Din kind of owes him for helping him out and doing all that stuff. Bo-Katan and her little clan seem to really not like Boba.
Well, especially after the little bar skirmish.
Yeah, after that whole little bar skirmish. And what's funny is after the 7th episode, the last episode of the show, I want to go back and watch the season 2 scenes now with them, because now that we have more of that built-in storyline, I think it's really gonna, I think it's gonna help out, and I think you're gonna enjoy it in a little bit different way. Dwight says, I think we're gonna see multiple Mandalorians. And then he goes on to say, we did hear his voice in the trailer. I brought this up in a convo with Daryl, actually. Holding out on me, huh? Little extracurricular head-to-head Star Wars show.
The backyard parking lot conversations, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt, and I think that a lot of people, even though it made sense from a marketing perspective, I also think that they were purposely trying to tie that in by showing him killing Bib Fortuna and all that as the post-credit scene of the season finale of The Mandalorian in season 2. I mean, they're obviously tying that together. Boba was in The Mandalorian. I have no doubt that Din's going to pop up in this. And that will probably help us set up season 3 of The Mandalorian. In fact, what I hope actually happens is that much like the Book of Boba Fett had its post-credit scene in The Mandalorian, I hope we get a post-credit scene in the Book of Boba Fett showing us something for The Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be awesome. Dwight says he may have to show that chain code on Mandalore. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I actually enjoyed about The Mandalorian season 2 the most was that whole exchange between Boba Fett and Bo-Katan and her people,
Oh, yeah, man, yeah.
Because that was the first time that you actually saw Boba Fett, because remember, he was the only representative of Mandalorians that we ever saw. And then, Django comes in, and then even in Legends, it was like, now, they since reversed that, right? So there was a couple of different things that happened in Legends. Number one, long before episode 2, Boba's real name was Jaster Reel or something crazy like that. And then when Lucas kind of undid that whole backstory and changed it with the whole Django, Boba, unaltered clone thing, they went even further by at first saying that, they kind of culturally appropriated the Mandalorians, It's like they were just wearing the armor, and they were always considered to be, kind of public enemy number 1 to real Mandalorians, because those guys were the famous ones. But now it seems like what they've done in Disney canon is, that whole scene where he's like, no, we're real Mandalorians. Look, here's our clan. Here's our, it's like, oh, okay. So now you guys are all, but
Same thing.
yeah, we'll have to see. Dwight says it was a line that went something like, "You sit on the throne of your former employer." Oh, was that are you saying that was the line for Din?
Oh, in the trailer.
Yeah. Because that would have been talking about Jabba. I mean, I guess it could have been. It's hard to tell because a lot of times with the whole Mandalorian thing, they once they get through that little helmet thing.
Yeah, now everybody sounds like,
they
the
kind
same.
of, they kind of have that similar, you can tell there's a little bit of a difference. That's why, actually, when you stop and think about how they've done this whole Book of Boba Fett series, Dwight says, yes, it was. One of the things I really liked about it is the fact that, it really kind of helps that they went back with Tamira Morrison and redubbed the scenes in the original trilogy, so they had his voice. They decided to do that after the whole Jango Fett thing, but it's kind of cool because it actually ties everything in to what we're seeing now.
Matches.
Yeah, and I've been meaning to do this actually. Is going back. Well, I don't need much of an excuse to see the original trilogy, but
right.
At the very least, depending on how much time I end up having, going and just watching all the Boba Fett scenes, because they're going to feel differently now. And that, to me, is one of the most exciting parts of this whole thing. Because the more we get all this world building, the more they're fleshing out these characters, the more that we're actually seeing of everybody in the different worlds. And I mean, look at how much more we know about Tatooine now. I just think it's really cool because when you go back and you rewatch this stuff, it really enriches everything. And so I'm really looking forward to, just how they do everything. And I'm really looking forward to the season finale of this show. Dwight says, bringing Mando into the Book of Boba Fett brings a lightsaber into the show. I don't know if I actually wanted to see that in this show. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, if he needs muscle and he needs all the help he can get, it makes sense for him to reach out to Din because there's that prior relationship. And plus, Din kind of owes him.
Yeah. And the fact that, but I mean, seeing the Darksaber pop up, I mean, that could, once again, like I said, that could be a good setup for season 3 of Mandalorian.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen.
And I think also, it will strike fear in a lot of people because they're like, oh wait, there's more of them out here than we thought. And then now he's like the leader. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, yeah, adds a little bit more weight to it. Like if Din shows up with the Darksaber.
And it makes me wonder too. Well, and it also makes me wonder how many, because we know with the whole Clone Wars and all that stuff with the Darksaber, but I wonder sometimes how many people, like I guess in the modern world, really know what the Darksaber is, or would they just look at it as kind of a variation on a lightsaber? I guess it doesn't really matter if you got some dude wielding this thing, But yeah, I mean, I understand the whole it's almost like, can we please just have one show that doesn't have a lightsaber in it? But, at the same time, I mean, it's kind of a big thing. I mean, it'd almost be like saying I want a war movie without, bombs or something. I mean, it's the tools of the trade.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily...
Star Wars history and Star Wars, lore. I mean, everybody, like you hear the hum of a lightsaber, you instantly kind of go, uh-oh, like, who's that? Because you don't know if there's some guy, sell it on the black market, or if this is a person who actually wields it because he's a Force user.
Right. And you also had to look at it from the standpoint, because I think a lot of people say things like, well, I don't know if I want to see a bunch of Jedi and all that stuff. But again, if Luke is rebuilding the Order and you start to see this stuff pop up more and more, it would make sense that you would just run into him once in a while. Now, granted, it almost seems like it swings the other way, because once the whole Ben Solo Kylo Ren thing went down and Luke kind of shut the doors, now everybody's, by the time The Force Awakens hit, everybody's like, oh, I thought Luke Skywalker was a myth. And I'm thinking, how? I mean, it was only like 30 years ago he destroyed the stupid Death Star. JFK was around like 60 years ago or something, and there's nobody going, oh, I think JFK was a myth. It's like, no.
I know he died.
Right, right.
And that's what I just think they just assumed he was dead,
No, that could be. But I mean, she carried it one step further. It'd be one thing. It's like, oh, I thought he was dead or whatever. It's like, oh, I thought he was a myth. It's like, what? He destroyed the Death Star 30 years ago, lady. I mean, not that long ago,
Well, yeah, but I guess Luke wasn't, though, in the front and center, though, like after that, though. Like, okay, after he blew up the Death Star, I mean, he kind of went looking for, the whole Jedi holocrons and all that type of stuff. So he kind of like
he
fell
was
off the
all
grid.
Over the place back then. In Legend stuff and everything.
Legends.
No, I'm not talking about Legends. I mean, even now. I mean, even in current comic book canon, he's everywhere. He's one of the main Senate guys. I mean, he's not, Leia's more the actual, like, political figure, but his Jedi Order was still doing stuff. I mean, even in Bloodline, which takes place when Ben Solo's a little kid. Luke Skywalker is very much front and center in everybody's minds, because there's this whole thing about, we don't necessarily want the Jedi to start to interfere with things again. So it was kind of a big thing. I mean, to think that he died or he disappeared, that's one thing. But to think that he's like a myth, Dwight's like, you mean JFK wasn't a myth? I mean, he wasn't exactly Luke Skywalker, but,
Yeah.
Dwight also says, it will definitely be a transitional episode for Mandalorian Season 3. Just why I think it will be quite a few Mandalorians coming to help. It would definitely make sense. Like, my money wouldn't necessarily be on Bo-Katan and all that. My money would be more on, like, the, what were those Mandalorians that were, like, underground for a long time?
With the armorer and everything like that.
Yeah. I could see that. Like, how they came to Din's help, or Din's aid, when, Kreef was still hunting him down. So, we'll just have to see. It's going to be really interesting. I cannot wait to see how this show ends. And again, I was really happy that we got another, like 40-some minute episode. I'm really hoping that these things get longer and longer, because if you think about it, we're on 4. So we only have 5, 6, and 7. And that's it. So I think that, again, we're done with the flashbacks. I don't think there's going to be any more flashbacks. I think when he jumped out of the Bacta and said, okay, you're healed, I think that meant, yep, no more flashbacks. So, it's going to be, I think, a really exciting ride from here. But how would you characterize your overall thoughts on the episode?
Overall thoughts, I mean, I thought it was good. Like I said, from the top, I agree with Ronaldo. It was an enjoyable episode. Had some flaws. I'd probably give it a solid 7.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit higher. I'm gonna give it an 8. Only because, in spite of its flaws, I still think that it's starting to find its stride. Because we got a little bit of everything that we like. We got a little bit of exposition. We got, some good, quiet, dramatic, meaty type scenes, like the campfire scene with Fennec and Boba, and a little bit of character building that way. We got some cool action. Again, there was some flawed action too. A little basically the Ratatouille scene. Ronaldo gives it a 7. Dwight, looks like you're gonna. While I'm talking, you're gonna have to give your rating as well. But yeah, I think that it basically had a good balance of everything that we like to see in this stuff. So I'm hoping that moving forward now, they start to ramp everything up. And now we actually start to concentrate. I mean, I'm kind of rolling into that, what do I want to see on the next episode part? And then, of course, I'll give you your chance, and then you guys chatting in can have your chance. But it's basically, I want to see a little bit more now of the current thing. Because you know what one scene we didn't really talk about that was really poignant to me? Was the whole
table scene.
Yeah, the whole table scene, the meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, that scene was really good. And that's, I think, what people were expecting when they first saw the trailer for this thing. It was a little bit more of a Godfather vibe. Even the music kind of had a slight Godfather thing. And then, what's to stop us from killing you? And then the Rancor puts his claw up, and it's like, oh. Because at first I thought maybe Chrysanthemum was going to step in.
Yeah.
But then when that happened, they're like, oh. And you had to love it when Boba was like, yeah, and he's kind of hungry. And the fact that whole table was like right above.
Which is perfectly positioned.
Yeah.
Just in case.
So I mean, I thought that was a really nice touch too. So I want to see more of that stuff moving forward, I think. So what would you, Dwight basically says, I liked it. I think I would go with an 8 as well. Definitely some things that should have been left on the cutting room floor. And then, of course, Ronaldo was like, yeah, the meeting scene is what I want this show to be. So what do you want to see from the next episode?
From the next episode?
Yeah.
I want to see some strategy. I really want to see Boba strategize and really like start to come into his own and really kind of figure out like, okay, this is really how, like, I want him to get his muscle. I want him to kind of like, and then now start to be strategic in how things are. And I want people to kind of see the shift, like, oh, this dude is serious. Like, that's really what I'm looking for next episode.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I would like to see a little bit more shooting biker gangs, getting revenge on the Sarlacc, a little less holding up a little cooking droid and saying I'm Boba Fett and all this other stuff. It's like you really want to see Boba Fett be the Boba Fett that we envision.
Or at least be Jango. I mean,
right.
I mean, at least Jango was like, popping, like when that one little, I don't know, whatever that creature was coming towards him. How he popped him right between the eyes. So I want to see him, and then he did the whole like gunslinger spinning the gun and then putting.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly,
like that type of stuff.
Absolutely, Boba Fett was always portrayed as kind of like the bounty hunter version of Han Solo. That's kind of the vibe he always was. Yeah, like a Clint Eastwood, man with no name. Yeah, right, exactly. So, yeah, that's what I'm hoping too. But the important thing is, we know what we think. We know what all the wonderful people we've been chatting with think. Question is, what do you guys think? You guys are watching this. You're thinking, hey, maybe I should hit that subscribe button right now. That's a great idea, actually. I think that you should hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you haven't done so already, and, of course, hit the notification bell so you know when we're coming on. We generally stream live every Monday night, every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, a little programming note here. Friday will be fine. We'll be on as usual. Monday, though, I have an event that I have to do Monday night, so not sure. If we are live, it'll be late, but we'll have to see what happens. And, of course, we're going to do everything we can because we're actually reviewing this show, and I don't want to get too far behind on this. So, we'll just have to just kind of keep watching the channel.
Right here.
Yeah, you guys will see, hey, if you hit the notification bell, you'll know when we're going to be up next. So, with that, we will see you guys Friday night at 8. We don't really know what we're talking about yet, I don't think.
Not yet.
All right, well,
the
man has confirmed. We do not know. We don't know. We don't have any idea. But once again, if you guys are checking out, you got that notification bell and you're subscribed, you're going to know. You're going to know before anybody else. So we're looking forward to chatting with you guys again Friday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.